Hi guys, welcome back to the Butterfly Effect podcast. This is episode 6 of our Until Dawn show. This is Vengeance. As always, I'm joined again by Anya and Jack. So this whole episode, I'm going to kick right up into it. Starts off with Matt and Emily again. The last time we left them, they were being stared down at the cliff by elk. Scary, scary. Anya, I'll pass the conversation ball to you. What did you think of this scene?
Okay, so obviously they're a little intimidating, but I did choose to leave them alone because I figured nothing good could have come out of me attacking one of them. And I didn't do it in this playthrough, but there was a kill everyone playthrough I did later on where I wanted to kill everyone at the soonest possible moment. So for Matt, it would be here at the cliff. And then as I already hit the elk and he's falling down, I decided, maybe I'll save him. So I did all of the QTEs to climb back up to the cliff. And I was too excited to just pick up my phone and message our group chat or something. I know Cody was in it. And I was too excited to say I saved him. So I missed the very last QTE because I'd already put my controller down to grab Emily's hand. And I just lost him there anyways. But it was kind of interesting though to see Emily up in the fire tower by herself. Because it's very lonely, kind of sad.
Yeah, it does actually add a lot of depth to Emily in that sense, where if she's with Matt, she's just moaning the whole time. But if she's without Matt, she's actually really missing him, and it's oh wow, Emily has a heart.
Yeah, she's just a lot more quiet. When she's climbing up the ladder, she's it's fucking freezing. Instead of it's so windy out here.
Yeah, true. Oh, bless. But yeah, Jack, I know we heard it from you first. Don't fuck with animals. But did you kill the elk?
No, I didn't kill the elk. I felt as though, obviously, don't fuck with animals. But two, it felt like it was one of those moments in the game where, although you were given the chance to do something dramatic, I don't know, it didn't feel earned, especially at the beginning of the episode. So I was thinking, no, I'm just going to try and walk through these. But to be fair, Supermassive did do a good job because obviously you've got the whole connection back to Hannah and Beth falling off the cliff. There's some nice parallels there. So I think the best thing was to stay calm, and that's what I did.
Yeah, of course. I think so Supermassive Game throws this sort of quick time event at us quite often where there'll be a timer and there'll be a target on something, and 9 times out of 10 I don't think we're supposed to hit it. But Until Dawn's kind of one of the first games where we're playing with this, where we're kind of getting accustomed to it, and I do know some people that do panic and reach for that button. And when you play these games, you really just have to learn to chill down and just kind of really take your time with it and not hit animals. That's we said, that's the biggest thing, right? But yeah, it actually makes some sense when Matt as a character does go for the elk, because I think at one point Emily describes him as meat for brains or something, how he's all brawn. And you can kind of see it. I know he's kind of a little bit of a pushover or a bit of a, in certain playthroughs. But he is a jock, and you can see, an angle or a world where Matt would do that, where he'll just get an axe to protect his girlfriend and start hitting animals, even though he shouldn't. So it is almost viable, but yeah, I never hit the elf myself. Hit the elf?
Hit the elf?
That would be interesting.
Elf
Jesus
on the
Christ.
shelf.
Elf on the shelf. Matt, what are you doing, mate?
All day.
I remember Will Ferrell in this game.
Exactly. them kids are not getting gifts for Christmas. Matt's just gone and killed the elves, guys. Oh man.
Jesus.
Yeah. But then we get to the fire tower. What did you guys make of this whole sequence? I'll start with Anya.
I thought it was interesting. I thought it was a cool location to end up at. Proves that there's not just the little lodge on the mountain. There's actual stuff around it, alongside the mines and everything. And it was a smart play by Emily, using her brains. Say what you will about her, but she wanted to get help, and she got that help. Sure, they were gonna take their sweet time, but she did it. And it's very unnerving because I don't like being that high up personally, and then it later proves my point when it's falling over. I'm just I would be shitting my pants. Like if I was like in there actually, but I don't know. I liked it a lot, and it definitely was just like a nice. Yeah, we're gonna get the help. Stuff's going wrong again.
Yeah, I think I do appreciate Emily a lot in this scene, especially if she's by herself. It does actually make her look a lot stronger. I did get like I get she's panicked and stressed, but I did get a little frustrated with her trying to communicate over the radio tower, where there's clearly like a really good option that's like instructions for them, and then there's clearly like a panicky one. But yeah, Jack, what did you think of the whole radio tower scene?
It is good, and to come back to that point you just made, it is hilarious when you're doing a piss about playthrough, and it's sort of like the options are, give your name, your location, what the situation is, be very clear, or you can just scream and be like, we're all gonna die.
Like, thanks, Emily, very helpful.
And then it gives you the choice again, and it's just sort of like, we're gonna die, help us, and then it's just like, and then he still says like, okay, we got you, and it's like, makes no fucking sense.
Oh yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah, but no, overall really good scene, and some pretty important choices in this segment as well. So yeah, I'll go back to you first, Liam. So like, did you give the flare gun to Matt?
I think I gave it to Matt based off of what I saw in a totem, and I analysed the totems, and I thought to myself, if Matt has the totem, I think it's Matt. Anya, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Is it Matt who gets the flare and the totem?
What? Yeah, it like tells you should give it to Matt, but then like the thing with it is that he'll fire it off, even though like the smart idea is to agree with Emily to go to the fire tower.
Yeah.
And then if he does that, then you kind of just waste it with no choice.
Yeah, but if you disagree, you
can hold on to it.
Yeah, so I disagreed and I gave it to Matt, so I held on to it. So that's what happened in my playthrough. Quick round the room. Jack, what did you do in your one?
I can't remember. I think I kept hold of it as Emily. I just thought that it was probably inevitable that they were going to get split up, and I was thinking, let her keep the flare gun. She might need it at some point. I don't know.
Anya?
Yeah, most people don't give it to Emily because of like they'll see the totem. Because I gave it to Matt, but because I agreed with him, he just fucking flung it up there, and I'm like, all right, well, you could have used that later.
He just decided to go for like the Katy Perry like fireworks. Just
literally, I'm just like, I didn't tell you to do that, sir.
Just like ruins that chance of survival.
It does.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, that literally. So yeah, obviously we get to the end bit where the fire tower starts to collapse. Where those like skinny arms like hit the wires and like absolutely mess this like pretty frail tower. I'm not gonna lie, if it's held up by a few wires.
Literally, like, what if a bad storm happens? And
yeah, which like you think it would on that mountain, right? How has the tower survived that long? And it just takes one Wendigo to just like fuck about with it, and then it just falls. So yeah, we get to this pretty dramatic choice. Everyone's played Until Dawn. If you haven't, what are you doing? But secondly, I will explain. So like, they kind of fall, and they're kind of in the mines, aren't they? And there's a massive drop, and then you play as Matt, and Emily's falling, and you have a choice here: jump to safety or reach for Emily. But before, you can start confronting Emily. And, especially about the relationship with Mike, if you guys had that, which you two would have, I wouldn't have. I just want to get around the room here. As Matt, did you guys, take the opportunity to, rub salt in the wound on Emily a little bit? I'll start with Jack.
Yeah, they did start having a bit of a domestic. And I was thinking at the time, this isn't the time or the place, guys. She's about to fall down into this massive cave. Probably going to get crushed by the tower afterwards, and now you're having a pop at one another. So yeah, they did actually. It was fun while it lasted, but before you know it, I sort of jumped to safety as Matt anyway.
Oh, is that so? I think for myself, I still had the option of like stand up to Emily, and I did, because I know in the earlier playthroughs, Jack, you said that you weren't very much a pushover. You would stand up as Matt a lot. I didn't. Yeah. I very much folded as Matt a lot. He was very much a pushover in my playthrough. So I thought if this was like a film, this would be a perfect opportunity where this would happen. I can see this being quite cinematic. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to stand up to Emily here and now. Probably not the best time, but I'm pretty sure she plays that card like, oh, save me, you know, like. But you kind of think that it's Emily being Emily to like get out of it and survive. Anya, what did you do in this sequence?
I was just nice to her. I like Emily, and it wasn't the time to confront her about it. And like I do really enjoy like the variation of like this one conversation though, because like if you don't show Matt the telescope thing, like he won't even bring it up. You can like scold her for being bossy, and then like if you were nice to her, she'll apologize. And like my beef with confronting her about the mic thing, because I think it's just like a way to like make you more angry with her like before the choice to save her, because most people are just like, she's a cheater, she cheated with Mike, even though like my theory is that I think it's been kind of confirmed by the devs too, that she was just saying that to like get a move on the conversation and just like tell him what he probably wants to hear in that moment. Not that he wants to hear that, but she was just like, okay, yeah, fucking help. My thing is like, why are people only mad at Emily and not Mike? Because wouldn't technically Mike be cheating on Jess too?
Yeah, I thought about this a lot actually. And one thing, if we go all the way back to the lodge scene, this probably doesn't belong in this episode, but I think Mike's pretty open. He just goes back with Jess. He's like got his arm around her in front of Emily, while Emily seems to be quite defensive around it. You know, like lying to Matt about, you know, where she was and stuff. And it almost like Emily is hiding it, and she just definitely has that bit of like a lying sort of devilish nature about her. So, I mean, that would be my counter-argument to that, but I do know exactly what you mean. It is a very good point you do raise there. So, yeah, I can't remember. So, did you jump to safety, or did you reach for Emily?
I tried to save her initially, and then, like, it started to fall even more. And then I decided the second time just to jump to safety. I'm like, there's no way I'm reaching her. Sorry, babe. Love you. But it's good that I did, because I didn't have the flare gun at this point. So...
course.
Saved Matt there.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it literally snapped with you, by the way. I tried to reach, and then it gave me one warning, and I was like, okay, I'm going to take the game's advice and jump to safety as well. So all three of us did that. I think another reason for me as well, and it's something I've not really gone into, is the game's a horror game, and there are jump scares in it, but that didn't really get me. A big part of the horror for me was the fear that my characters would die. I really wanted to try and get a perfect playthrough as best as I could. I really wanted all 8 characters to survive. And this scene is so tense because you really don't know which one's the right option. There's not really like a logical answer, is there? There's one that jumps to safety, but then you could be killing Matt by doing that. Like one, you know, like helps Emily, one helps Matt. I jumped to safety, and I really wasn't a fan of it. I was tempted, like, do I look up Google because I'm so torn? And it was such a difficult decision. One of the biggest ones, which like split my hair's first playthrough. But because none of us would have had the scene on our first playthrough, it's worth mentioning it, isn't it? Have any of you ever played the bonus Matt scene if you do reach for Emily twice and you get to see him in the mines? Have you, Jack?
I haven't. No, but I have seen it on YouTube.
Yeah. How about yourself, Anya?
Yeah, I've done it. I've done a good handful of different playthroughs. I gave him the flare gun and actually like looked up how to actually hold on to it, and so it was very satisfying to save him from that. And then I did like another one where I gave Emily the flare gun so she'd be able to use it later.
Of course.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. And a special shout out to our friend Cody, who we've mentioned before, who got a perfect playthrough on his very first blind playthrough without looking anything up. And he fell into the mine and he had the flare gun and he managed to use this. And like that must have been just such a rewarding playthrough, especially knowing that Matt can easily die at this scene.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's pretty incredible to me. But
Sucks
yeah,
though, like
'cause-
even if you do save him, like you don't see him for next 4 chapters.
of course, yeah, and even this death as well. It might be one of the most gruesome deaths in the game, right? Just getting absolutely hooked through the jaw. Like, yeah, it's such a scene to behold. But yeah, really good sequence. Are we all happy to move on to Ashley and Chris?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, terrific. So yeah, I'll pass the conversation on to yourself, Jack. So yeah, what did you make of this whole Chris and Ashley scene?
I liked it. I certainly enjoyed it. Maybe a little bit more than the Matt and Emily sequence. It was just, I suppose it's probably because you had the little jump scares in there. There was still the questions remaining over the sort of the supernatural elements, because Ashley kept seeing the ghost and Chris didn't. Then they've also filtered these other things in there, such as like the video camera, the fake newspapers, the movie reel. So at the same time, they've got this situation where even Ashley I think Ashley really takes the role as like the player at this point, because I think she starts to clock on, and actually it's someone that's got an agenda. And, you know, unless Hannah and Beth, one of them survived, and it's them doing this, you're in a place where, well, who would really want to terrify us? Who would sort of want to avenge the death of Hannah and Beth? So it was probably at this point where, for me, Josh come into the equation, but I'm pretty sure in my first playthrough I didn't find any of the pieces saying, you know, about that his dad is like was he a movie director or something like that, and he's got all these sort of fancy props around the house. So I almost quickly quashed it away, because I was thinking, well, no, because Josh is dead. Like, we saw his intestines fall out. I was thinking, like, who else could literally benefit from this? But ultimately, I did like it. Like, you got sort of the moment where they're briefly separated, and then of course that it then sort of starts to unfold into this whole sort of Saw-like sequence, which I really, as a quick tangent, I hope they do something similar for The Devil in Me in the Dark Pictures games as well, because that's my favourite area of horror. You know, sort of a mad serial killer, you don't know who they are, they've got these elaborate traps, and yeah, that's just something that I really enjoy in like a video game and in a horror movie.
Yeah, I agree. No, really good points there. Anya, how about yourself? How did you enjoy the sequence?
I liked it. I kind of like it a little less as like replays go on, just because like I don't know, it's not like the most action-packed, juiciest thing. Obviously, like 7 and 8 are when things get real fun, but I did like it. I think the setting that they're in, like to have like a whole hotel like under your lodge, I think that's very interesting. A little odd, but it's cool, and I like the setting. I also like what this chapter in particular does for my opinion on Ashley, because there's a lot that you can do with her, and how you choose to play her. One thing I would want to mention before I get into Ashley is like at the beginning of it, when Ashley's like, "Thanks for saving me. I chose to save Josh." So I like how Chris was just like, "Oh yeah, and I would totally do it again," you know?
Yeah.
But this is definitely the chapter where Ashley was starting to grate on me a little bit, because she was just screaming, crying, and in her defense, I don't blame her. I would probably be the same way. But like playing it out, I'm just like, girl, chill. And then later on, you find like the whole like honesty thing, I don't know if that is like true. I feel like I've checked it myself, but like if you respond dismissively to Hannah and Beth's prank, like with Ashley, her honesty goes up, and if you respond sympathetically, it goes down. I think I tried it myself, and I think that is true, but I find that very interesting. But yeah, she's just like, wasn't my fault. I didn't, yeah, it was kind of my fault, but I didn't personally make her run into the woods, you know? And Chris is like, damn, girl.
Yeah, to build on your point about Ashley, I completely agree. I think she's kind of like a bit of a mundane character, definitely not top tier out of the 8. But this scene really starts to like, you know, like she starts to blossom, and her kind of like character arc really can vary at this point. You can actually kind of start to make her a bitch, and not many people know this, but Ashley has got a very dark side based off of other choices you can do later on. And even just as you said, certain conversation elements, you know, she does here, you can start to see that. And sometimes she can reply with real sass against Chris, and it's kind of nice to see. It's definitely interesting.
Because she's definitely like propped up as that, you know, scared little sweet girl, but she can be, you know, kind of a bitch. And that used to make me hate her, but now that's one of the things that I really, really like about her, and she's one of my favorites now for me, because I like her versatility and what she can do.
I agree. I actually quite like as well that there's a character who's almost more timid and probably shyer than the main girl, Sam, because I think a lot of these horror tropes make the main girl the outcast or the shyer one. So it was nice that Sam was somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. She was still quite level-headed and confident, while Ashley was on the other end of the spectrum from, you know, like her in the middle versus like, say, Jess and Emily. One thing I really like about this whole segment with Ashley and Chris is, like I mentioned before, this is the exact same length as the Mike Sanatorium scene, but you wouldn't think it. Same length, but there's just a lot more going on. There's just less like picking up totems and clues. But there's dialogue, there's a lot of banter between them, and it's also a really nice welcome change of pace and character dynamic. If you look at the other characters we have together, Jess and Mike, Matt and Emily, they're already coupled up. These guys are kind of like the two quiet, nerdier characters who clearly, you know, they like each other, and you're kind of trying to ship them as you play. And it's really interesting to see how it develops, because, you know, as you, Chris, you're kind of trying to get him in there. But, you know, you've got all these little, like, choices, and, you know, there's, like, chaos going on. And I don't know, I just really like this whole dynamic, especially, you know, seeing them, you know, go through this basement sequence. Another side note I want to mention while we are here, there is the bit with the dollhouse, and that absolutely messes with any theories you might build. Because if you think it's something to do with maybe, like, I don't know, the stranger outside or anything, or the psycho, someone's absolutely recreated the dolls with the cameras with the Hannah prank, and it makes you think there's an inside character here. Someone's definitely involved one of the 8, and it makes you confused, and it kind of brings back the Hannah and Beth theories, if there is that, still knocking about. But yeah, no, really brilliant sequence, especially things such as, you know, like the choice of like whether you picked up the scissors or not, even just to get a little bit back at the psycho. It's really like rewarding when you get a little stab in there. Another thing as well, and it's to build off the point you mentioned in a few chapters ago, Jack. These characters really like to prank each other a lot. Now, I don't know if you guys, when you got to the doorway, you could either follow Chris or investigate the movement. If you investigate the movement and you find out a bit about the psycho, like, and this is if Sam isn't cool, there'll be a dummy of her instead. And Chris can use that dummy to jump scare Ashley when there's like a psycho next door. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing? Like,
Yeah.
it's like chapter 6 and they still haven't learned.
They're all guilty of it as well. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a moment for every single character in this game where they can like jump scare someone else in the group.
Yeah, because even Sam does it to Josh in the basement on the talk scene, doesn't she? Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause she's like, do you hear that?
Yeah.
Just messing with him. And then Matt just does it automatically in the beginning with the telescope thing.
Yeah. And then you've got a therapist just slamming tables.
Yeah, even he does it.
28 samples!
Yeah. Oh, what are they like? Yeah, I wonder if it's going to be the same in the quarry, to be honest.
Just pranking
yeah.
each other over and over.
That's literally it. So yeah, are you guys happy to move on to the final bit with the choice? Obviously, we won't go into it too much because that's actually a chapter 7 thing, but are you happy to talk about the cliffhanger?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So yeah, like, one thing I'd add, something that I spoke about in a previous episode, actually. Of course, spoiler alert, you should know this, that Josh is the psycho. But he does say in a previous episode that what Chris and Ashley need is a traumatic event for them to bond over, for them to admit their feelings to one another so that they can become a couple. And in this sequence, I mean, they do that, don't they? They start talking to one another, you know, sort of dilly-dallied around the whole idea of, you know, us being together and we haven't said anything and now it's going to be too late. And, you know, in a weird, twisted way, it did, you know, Josh's plan did work for that. In my playthrough, the plan unfolded and went very wrong very quickly because of the choice that I made. But yeah, guys, like, what did you decide? Because obviously you got this situation with the saws above their head. Chris has got to make a choice. Is he going to shoot himself or is he going to shoot Ashley? So yeah, Anya, what did you do?
I ended up not shooting anybody, but I did initially point it at Chris, and then I switched it over to Ashley, switched it over to Chris, and then I'm just like, you know what? Whatever. I'm not going to be responsible personally for either one of, like, killing somebody. So I'm just going to let time run out, see what happens.
Yeah, no, I mean, you'll eventually learn that, or you have learned that was the correct decision to do. I mean, Jack, what did you do?
I went to shoot her in the face.
Just point blank, just straight up. You went to shoot her.
I thought, you know, I've been put in this situation again. I saved your life earlier. It's a bit unfortunate, but I'm just going to save my own skin in this situation. So that's what I did.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I did a similar thing. I took a real shining to Chris, and I thought it was quite a genius decision that I think they lead you to like Chris a little more than Ashley. Like, Chris just has a little bit more humour about him. And then you kind of like get this decision and you really don't want Chris to die. And I really got caught up where I believed it was happening, which is dumb because like you kind of know that all 8 characters can survive. And it's like, if you really believe that someone has to die here. But I guess that's the beauty of the game. I completely got lost in the story and I tried to shoot Ashley in the face and then it cut to black. And then obviously, if you stick around next week, you'll learn about the consequences of what happens if you don't know already. And Jack and I are deeply going to regret what the fuck we did. So, yeah.
Indeed.
But yeah, you guys happy to wrap the episode up there?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you very much for joining for Until Dawn episode 6. We'll be back next week for episode 7. As always, links are in the description. We have an Until Dawn playlist you can get through. But yeah, as always, guys, thank you very much for joining. See you at the next one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.